We continue this week of Locked On NHL in Utah. We hope you guys get ready for the 2024 NHL Entry Draft coming in just a few days from now. But maybe some of you guys are new to hockey, want to know how exactly does the NHL Draft work? How different is it from the other drafts in pro sports? So we'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On NHL in Utah.
You are Locked On NHL in Utah, your daily podcast on all things hockey in Utah, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Tom Callahan. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every single day. We are free and available everywhere you get your shows. We got a great show on today's episode because we're going to start a little bit of Hockey 101 for some of the new hockey fans out there. Maybe you are a hockey fan, but maybe want to learn something a little bit new that you might have not known before. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the draft, Tom, because the draft is coming up in just a few days from now, specifically this Friday at Sphere Las Vegas. So what better time than to introduce everyone with how the NHL draft exactly works?
Well, exactly. And as you mentioned, it's going to be at Sphere. Want to remind everybody there is a draft party if you want to go. June 28th. Doors open at 4 p.m. First round is expected to end around 7 p.m. Round one is on the first day, rounds 2 through 7 on the second day. And that is going to be downtown at the Delta Center. So if you wanted to attend that, that is the official team draft watch party. Okay, let's go through some basics here. This is Hockey 101 as far as the draft goes. Who can be selected in the draft? Anyone who is 18 to 20 years old. Now, the 18-year-olds must be 18 or older before September 15th and not older than 20 before December 31st of the draft year to be eligible. Players over 20 are now just all considered free agents, can be signed by whoever. Generally, the players are drafted from 3 different places: major junior hockey in the U.S. and Canada. There's college hockey teams and European junior and senior teams. It works a little bit different over there. You have younger guys playing for their senior teams in some cases, and it's kind of like climbing a little ladder within your town, as opposed to like we're used to North American athletes moving city to city here. Now, Robyn, the other thing I want to get into is draft order, because the first round has a lottery attached to it. Rounds 2 through 7, that is just simply reverse order finish. So worst team picks first in round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
Yep.
Unless you trade those picks. But now round 1, weighted lottery. So that's where you see the ping pong balls come into play, or the envelopes and all the different conspiracy theories about what really happened. I don't know why you're laughing, but so there's a weighted lottery, and it's done by percentage. The lower you finish, the better your odds of getting the number 1 overall pick. And then so you can move up a maximum of 10 spots. So really 11 is the last chance to get number 1. After that, if you're 13th, you could move up 10 spots, but you're going to 3. So that's the way that works. And then you have a 25% chance if you're the worst team in the league to get that first overall pick. Now, that was done to keep teams from tanking, really. Might be time to revisit that a little bit, but that's what the purpose of it was. So you get the weighted lottery. That's what happens there. Or sorry, team number 1 actually is 18.5%. It's not even 25%. It increases if you have more picks, which some teams have done. They've had 2 picks basically in the hopper to increase their odds. You could trade draft choices. You can move things around. Either you could trade picks, which is why Utah has the most picks of any team in the draft this year. And then the other thing is, once a player is picked, you have 2 years to sign them to an NHL entry-level contract. Now, that doesn't mean they come play for you right away, but if you don't sign them, at least your rights to sign that player expire. And so then you just, you have to get the guys back in the fold in 2 years, or they get a chance to walk. So That's kind of the long and short of it, Robin, as far as the actual draft setup for folks who might not know. But yeah, 18 to 20-year-olds are the people who are going to be in these drafts. And you'll see some guys go back to college, some will go back and play junior, some will go stay in Europe. And that's where you see players maybe not come over. They don't sign their entry level deal, and then it becomes a big deal. If a guy does sign an ELC, you have up until 9 games to keep that player and decide what to do with them. But the minute they play the 10th game, year one of their entry level contract begins. So there is also that choice to be made once the season starts.
A lot of those are certainly aspects that a lot of people don't talk about. And I feel like, maybe if you were a Coyotes fan, you kind of knew how that worked because you saw one Dylan Guenther be a part of that, where everyone was wondering, what number game is he on? He's on 2, he's on 3. Oh God, he's on game number 10. What's going on? Kept going. And I mean, honestly, did he deserve it? Yeah, absolutely. He played great. But you're right.
And sometimes it is about an extra year of team control. It's political more than play based. I mean, a guy might look really, really good, but if you think he's going to play middle of the road minutes and you'd rather keep that one more year of control, teams will do that. They'll send a guy back to junior or college or wherever just to have that one more year.
Yeah, which is also interesting because there's a whole nother aspect, and I think we can save that for another episode, where a player can't, they get past that first year of the entry level contract, but they get sent down for a certain time. They retain an extra year of restricted free agent rights.
Right.
So it's like, this player got sent down before the halfway point of the season. Then we'll send them back to juniors now, which means that we get one extra year to hold that he will be considered a restricted free agent.
And all of this is agreed upon in the collective bargaining agreement, which has already been extended once. I think you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I feel like it's due for a rework. It will come up for expiration here at the end of not this, but I think next season. So I imagine you're going to start seeing some negotiations relatively soon. And I guarantee you that's going to be part of it. The RFA status, you may see changes to qualifying offers. You may see changes to anything really, arbitration rights, how all that's going to work, because of course all the players want arbitration rights right away. The teams never want them to have arbitration rights, so it really, it's a lot of interesting interplay there in the negotiations.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I know a lot of people just don't like arbitration in general, because imagine being a player and having a team tell you this is why you don't deserve this kind of money.
Right. This is how bad this guy is. We love him, but he's horrible, and we only want to pay him this. And then there's the player going, well, I'm amazing. Feelings always get hurt. Feelings get hurt. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's all part of the contract bit. But when it comes to the draft, I feel like, they're, again, a lot of these players, a lot of them know that going in. They get these agents that really help guide them through it, even beforehand, right? I feel like that's kind of how we know a lot of things, right? A lot of these times, these players get agents, and we find out, it's like, oh, we found out through X player's agent that if they get drafted by a certain team, this player is not going to play for them. They just let them do all the talking because, PR and all stuff like that. And it's it is a whole deal, but those are some of the aspects that go into, getting drafted. More specifically, if you are a projected first round pick, you're going to have an agent. If you're maybe later on, maybe you didn't even think about it. If you're going into the 7th round, maybe that's something that's not on the top of your list. Definitely not.
Even guys in the minors have agents. And are they the super agents that we're used to seeing? No. But they do have agents who are trying to get them into an ECHL camp, or maybe even trying to get them in on an SPHL or an FPHL team. Now they're not doing a ton of work and they're not getting paid a ton of money, these guys who are handling the lower level players, but they have the connections. They make phone calls for guys. They get them into training camps here and there, get them a tryout, get them a look. That's what they get paid for. So, but no, are you coming in with a higher powered agent and coming over the top with, so I don't know, something like that. It really depends, I think, on a guy's upside. Sometimes You could even apply for representation and not get it. So, you may think to yourself, well, I'm worth representing right now, and no one picks you up. So what are you going to do then? Well, you can represent yourself.
Absolutely. What we're going to do, let's keep talking about the NHL draft and, what are the ins and outs of specifically, how this all works. How different is the NHL draft from the drafts of the other three major sporting leagues in North American sports? We'll talk about that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can bet on everything from who's going to hit it out of the park to how many strikeouts is your favorite pitcher going to pitch. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's keep things rolling on this episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. We're doing some Hockey 101, talk about exactly how the NHL draft works. And let's kind of help guide people a little bit more, Tom, because the NHL draft has a lot of aspects. So there are some aspects that are similar to the other three major, of the big four, the other three major sports leagues. But also, I think it stands in stark contrast to the other ones as well.
Yeah, I think the draft for all four majors, with the exception of baseball, to be honest with you, it's more about the show now. And hockey is going to Vegas, which is all about the show, and they're at Sphere, which is really all about the show.
Yep.
So, I mean, the NHL is making it an event. And, the NBA kind of makes it an event. Football makes it an event, just like they do with their combine. And baseball, not so much, because the baseball draft is
like
6,000 rounds. Right. It's just so long, and it goes on for 12 days, and it's crazy. But
and sometimes they'll even pick, we're going to, like the baseball, we're like, okay, we're going to go ahead, pick, John Smith out of Birmingham High School or whatever, like out of just someone who no one even knew, but and just because they had a 13th round pick, or even what if adding even extra big? It's like, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and draft Connor McDavid, because why not?
Right. One of my favorite stories about the baseball draft, because it lasts so many rounds, was that the Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda, was asked to make a pick just as a favor to a family friend. So he, with the Dodgers' last pick of the draft, picked Mike Piazza. That kind of worked out. So, it does happen. And, what's interesting is in the NHL, we've seen a couple of teams try to sneak in and grab a guy early, and there's a question about whether he's eligible. And, there's some interesting things. They try to pull a sneaky Pete here and there. But it's, for the most part, about that day one show. Like this year, there's zero question who #1 overall is going to be. Macklin Celebrini's got it sewn up, so there's no real drama there. But now what you have to sell is the drama of everything after that, because that pick's a formality. He's going to be a Shark. That's how it goes. So beyond that, now you really have to, kind of keep everybody interested and intrigued, and you're going to be telling the stories. I'm sure before Utah picks, if they stay at 6, even if they don't, they're going to kind of talk about the new franchise and the relocation and hey, here's what's going on, and check out Salt Lake. Isn't it cool? And, that kind of thing. They'll go to the Delta Center and they'll show everybody waving at the draft party. That's what they do. And the NHL has become very good at that. And I think that's really sports as entertainment now, Robyn. And I think that is the important thing for fans to understand. The first round of the draft takes way longer. Round 2 goes a little quicker. Round 3 goes even faster. Round 4 goes even faster. And by then you're just whipping through it at the end.
It is amazing, the fact that I think I went to go watch day 2 it would be up by like I would wake up at like a 7 a.m. because the last time was I think where was it? Nashville. It was Nashville last year. It was in what Montreal previous year, right? So and both those times because it's all the way though, it's over there on the east. Myself as a West Coast person, I'd have to get up early and it'd be a huge deal having to go through that. But even then,
Oh, you poor thing.
even then though, I was done. Like rounds 2 through 7 were already done by 10:30, almost 11. When in the previous day, where say starts at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and then the first round was done by 8, 9. It was a whole like 3-hour event because each team has a significant extra amount of time in the first round because they talk about all those things as you mentioned. They go through all that, and you said it's a show. It is a full-on show that they put on, and it's pretty cool.
And before a team picks, they're going to show you 3 guys they think they could pick, and they'll show you all the highlights, and they'll give you the analysis on the players. And then when they pick somebody, they're going to show you the highlights of who they picked, and they're going to give you the analysis. And it's a chance to kind of get teams hyped up, the fan bases of teams hyped up about who's coming. So I think that you'll see that, obviously there's going to be a lot about Celebrini coming in, but as the picks are made, you're going to get the instant breakdown from scouting staffs and guys analysts who live for this time of year, which is a lot of fun to see. People who are really into the prospects and have been following this for years and saw this kid play when he was 11. They know what kind of player they are, and that's why good scouts are critical to a team's success. If you can build a good scouting staff, your team's going to be good year in, year out.
And I think that's kind of the fun of it is when you get all that, specifically when there are scouts that disagree. There's
sure. Well, everybody's got their guy they're going to argue for.
Right. There's not only that. There are scouts, let's say, that are like people like you and me who are very eye test friendly. Like I like to watch how they play and kind of see how they are. But then there's another one that goes into all the advanced statistics. It's like, what's their NHLE? What is this number? What is that number? And I feel like this disagreement is kind of fun to watch, and specifically like last year, for example, when the Arizona Coyotes selected Dmitry Shemashev, people were going crazy. You're like, that is a complete reach. But then one analyst, one of the analysts who is a host of Locked On NHL Prospects, he's like, actually, that's not a reach. Like I got a chance to watch Shemashev play, and I think he's fantastic. He's one of my top guys. So, like there's so many different, there's so much to it, and it is pretty fun to really dive in and observe it all.
And it's interesting, especially with some of these European players. I have a fun draft story about Pekka Rinne, who I don't know if he'll be a Hall of Fame guy or not, but man, what a career with the Preds. The Predators never got a chance to actually see him play. They drafted him off reputation and a warm-up. So one of the Pred scouts went to go try to see him play. He was not playing much at all then because he was the backup to another guy named Nicholas Backstrom. So Backstrom they were on the same team. Backstrom was the starter. Pex was the backup. They drafted him off watching him in a warm-up and getting recommendations from other people. And they absolutely stole him late in the draft, as it turns out.
And those are kind of the cool things when you have those scouts that have enough of, let's say, I would say the term kind of clout or rapport with certain teams. So they're able to get that kind of information and kind of collect it. If you have a really good scouting crew, you are going to be able to make some incredible steals like that.
And it's all networking. It's all talking to people and people you trust, developing trust in their opinions of players. Because some coaches, some GMs, and even some observers are just going to try to sell you on a guy just because it's their guy. But finding the real concrete opinions, even when they're unpopular, of people who, and are also what's the word of looking consistent over time. That's the other important thing as far as building your draft board, and that's huge. And we haven't even talked about building a draft board, but I mean, you have to be prepared for contingency and contingency and contingency, trades and movement, and your guy's off the board or your guy falls, and suddenly you're like, well, I never thought I thought he was going to go number 2, but here we are sitting at number 6, and he lands in our lap. Maybe the bullseye changes, the target moves.
You're absolutely right. We still got more to get to on this episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. We're going to finish up our discussion talking about the NHL draft, teaching you guys exactly how it works. There's still a couple other things I want to talk about when it comes to how different the NHL draft is from others. So we'll get to that right after this. And we're back on this episode of Locked On NHL in Utah, as the NHL draft is just days away, and really just days away. Like, we're talking like, just, what is it now? Today, when everyone's listening, is Tuesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but only 3 days away. It is really, really close. So we want to make sure you guys all know how this all works. I want to bring something up, Tom, really quick, that really, I think, a couple things that really help the NHL draft stand out from a couple of the other ones that I've seen. For one, a lot of times, specifically in the first round, as you talked about earlier, it is, a lot of these, the NBA and NFL also like to put on a show. But in the NBA and NFL, what they do is when the player gets called up, they hold their jersey up and really mostly, like, it's very, very generic, whatever it is. They take their picture and that's that. In the NHL, that player not only gets the chance to walk up and throw that jersey on, but he also gets his hat and everything, and then he takes his picture. That's the only draft in which the player actually puts on the jersey when he gets drafted. And it's an amazing photo opportunity. And I feel like those players, they love it. Some of them just cannot stop smiling because they actually, holding something up versus putting it on. Honestly, I'd say it's a pretty big difference.
Which is why it was such a giant snub in 1988 when Eric Lindros would not put on the Quebec Nordiques jersey. He was drafted first overall by Quebec and said, I will not go play there. Didn't want to play there. And of course, if you know your hockey history, he eventually forced his way out. Other players have done it too. NFL players have done it. Yep. Strong arm teams into either picking them or not picking them. I mean, look at Eli Manning. Eli Manning said, I don't want to go to the Chargers. But so what happens is Lindros, the dominoes, all go into effect. And honestly, if you think about it, like, that trade laid the groundwork for what eventually became a really strong Nordiques team that then eventually became the Stanley Cup champion Avalanche. So it's funny to see how all that unfolded. But yeah, it was a huge snub. And when that happened for myself, I really couldn't believe it. I'm like, man, that's a giant slap in the face. I would be honored to be drafted by anyone at any time. And I never really liked that. That never sat well with me. And so, to this day, it's kind of funny, those early Eric Lindros rookie cards for Quebec just have him holding the jersey. And that's one of the only times you've ever seen that happen.
And it's interesting because, I mean, you're kind of hearing like stories of players essentially telling GMs, don't draft me.
Right.
But in that case, that team most of the time won't draft them because, like, why would we waste a draft pick on you? Because it's not worth our time if we get someone else on our draft board that's gonna be that not only wants to play for us, but is also highly skilled and has all the elements that we're looking for.
Right. And, I mean, players are young. You're 18 to 20. What do you really know about the world at that? And I could tell you don't yet. But you think you know. And so you try to make the decision that's best informed for you. So, it can be very interesting, but I like the moment. I like the photo op. It's cool to see. I like that some teams have like Velcro nameplates and name bars. They're ready to go in case they pick players that they've got like 6, 7, 8 name bars made up in case a guy falls to them, and they slap it on the jersey and they're able to present it to the guy with his name on it. I think that's pretty cool.
Another element that there's a couple other elements that are different, either starkly or slightly, the NHL from the other leagues. One is it's like either the owner or the president or the general manager or someone in the organization is the one making the pick, rather than the NFL and NBA, where in the NFL it's Roger Goodell announcing the pick, or in the NBA it's Adam Silver announcing the pick. It's different because you're talking to like, oh yeah, why would the commissioner announce a pick for a team? Why not have the team actually make the pick?
Which is why the first round goes a half hour longer than it should, because every team that comes to the podium has
a whole announcement.
We'd really like to thank the great fans of XYZ City for putting on a great show. What a great facility you have here. We know, I want to say hi to our watch party at, ABC Steaks, best bands in the league. And, that takes a while. So
it does take a while. It's cool because, again, it's a different.
It is.
It's different. And again, it adds a little bit more of a personal touch that that your name is getting actually called by the team rather than the commissioner. But plus, I think a lot of people can agree that the less they hear from Gary Bettman, the better.
He does get booed a lot, that guy. I don't know if he can make it through a whole round.
I mean, the others do a lot too. I know Roger Goodell does a lot too.
Yeah, and I mean, Bettman doesn't really deserve it, but it's just kind of the age-old tradition of booing the commissioner now.
It just comes with it. It really does.
It does.
Last thing I want to add, and it is different, but it's also the last time we are going to see this, Tom. The central, what we call like the a centralized draft, where everyone, like the staff, like scouting staff, the entire general manager, and the whole crew, their war rooms are on the floor of these arenas that they're in. So you can see the teams and all the name cards down there. If you're ever at a draft, you can see that all happening on the floor. People walking back and forth between tables, making trades, making other discussions. You can see guys pick up the phone, figuring out what's going to go on, making the call draft picks. All that is happening right in front of your eyes. And it's unfortunate, Tom. This is the last time we are going to see this because the NHL recently voted this last season to decentralize the draft, in which now they no longer are going to do that. But for the longest time, the NHL was the last holdout from doing that. And honestly, one of my favorite things about going to a draft, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to be there this year, unfortunately, due to some financial constraints, I cannot. But it would have been it's one of the unique aspects of the National Hockey League draft.
It really is. And, we talked about a couple of shows ago, what is Utah going to do? The Coyotes had become known when they were in Arizona for coming in those brick red Blazers. And will the organization continue that trend? Will they come in and what color will they pick? I mean, black is an easy choice, but are they going to pick the blue, the light blue? And I think that would be pretty cool to see if they decided to do that. So we'll see. That I'm going to have an eye out for. And you know what? It is interesting to see who's on the phone, who's working the phones, who's going back and forth. And you can always tell when something's about to happen if you're watching a table, because all of a sudden everybody is talking. There's chatter, there's energy. It's kind of neat. And then you as a fan begin to anticipate, hey, it looks like Boston's got something going. Hey, it looks like St. Louis has something going. I wonder if those two teams are making a deal. And it's pretty cool to see.
And I think in addition to that, one of the really cool things, and it kind of ties into what I just mentioned about the teams actually making the picks. The same thing applies in rounds 2 through 7, except no one goes on stage. What happens in those little war room tables, there's like each of the tables have like a little PA system that they literally press the button and they're like, there will be the Utah Hockey Club selects XYZ player. And they just move on from there. It's kind of like, that's kind of one of the cool things. They just let it go and go and go. And in day 2, the only one that introducing is Bill Daly. He's just out there standing up. It's like, all right, let 2 through 7 commence. Let's go.
Yep. And it's like he's got the starting pistol and they're
Boom.
off, all right. And then, so-and-so you're on the clock. So yeah, it's kind of fun that way. Robyn, I did want to let the Utah fans know the picks that Utah has this year. I think it's only right that we fill them in about that. So most picks of any team at the draft, at least heading into it right now. So round one pick, that is number 6 overall. Then in round 2, Utah owns its own pick, Florida's pick, which is either going to be 31st or 32nd in the round, and the Washington Capitals pick. In round 3, Utah has theirs, Colorado, and Edmonton's, which is also going to be either 31 or 32. Round 4, Utah has their pick and the Sharks pick, which is going to be the first pick of the 4th round. Round 5, Utah has its own. Round 6, it's Utah and Dallas. They have Dallas's round 6 pick this year. And then round 7, Utah has its own pick. So it's a pretty stout lineup right there. I mean, 3 in round 2, 3 in round 3, 2 in round 4. So a pretty good chance to stock the cupboards.
It really is. And I think that's going to be a unique opportunity, given that what we've talked about in the past, right? The last couple of weeks, we talked about it. I even talked about it when we were still talking about the Arizona Coyotes at the time, is this team is building through the draft. They are stockpiling assets. Are all their assets going to make it to the NHL? Probably not. But at this point, it's not a whole quantity over quality thing. It's more of you get both because you're gonna get something. Instead of finding a needle in a large haystack, you're just essentially just kind of separating all that, and you're figuring things out. You have a better chance of finding which guys are going to develop.
And my thought, too, with that is I'd be surprised if there wasn't at least one deal, if not multiple deals from Utah at the draft, moving some draft picks around, making some trades, bringing some guys in. So, I mean, there are other teams that always they have a guy they want to move up for. So, yeah, so I would not be surprised.
One thing I want to bring up, and this is something that not a whole lot talks about because – and again, it kind of goes again with the difference between between the two. The NFL, I think, it's the same amount of rounds, usually around that 7 rounds. I know because I know the NBA is only 2. The only reason why I say that is because a lot of people decide not to think about what the so a lot of people decide not to think about who's going to get selected in the 7th round because no one really pays attention to the 7th round, right? You take a look at, for example, in the NFL, their last pick, their guy, they're known as Mr. Irrelevant. Right. Very, very rarely does that player come out to actually make an impact in the NFL. Again, you got an outlier recently with Brock Purdy and, doing what he does at the San Francisco 49ers. In the NHL, round 7 picks actually end up sometimes being gold mines.
Yeah.
You've had some legendary players come out of the 7th round. And I have just from a stat page right here, I just took a look at it, just some of the 7th round picks. You got Joe Pavelski, Andre Palat, Eric Howla, Nick Dowd, Frederick Anderson, Mackenzie Weegar. I mean, you got those are just what I just named 6. Let me see if I can bring up some other ones from more recent. Kyle Burrows was a 7th round pick. Anton Forsberg was a 7th round pick.
Pekka Rinne was a 7th round pick. I told you the story.
Yep, Pekka Rinne was a 7th round pick. Joey Decord, a lot of Arizona fans might love to hear that one. He was a 7th round pick. So you have, and I think that's kind of why I love the NHL draft, Tom, is because that these guys, yeah, sure, maybe you might at the very moment they might get written off, but then they could come out to be great players. And again, I think Joe Pavelski is, the one I come as that extreme player because he played over 1,300 games in the National Hockey League, and it ends up becoming like, captain of Team USA in in some of the international events, and became a fantastic NHL player.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how, again, sometimes you're just throwing a dart, picking a guy, but sometimes you got that one scout who's over there going, I saw this kid play one time, one game. It was in October 2 years ago, but I really liked him. Let's take a flyer on him. And it turns out to be Joe Pavelski. So sometimes you get that.
It really is. And again, it doesn't happen all the time, but you do get it. And when it hits, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
It really is worth it. And I think that's kind of all the fun of the of it all. Like, everyone loves
Patrick Hornqvist was also a Mr. Irrelevant. I think Patrick Hornqvist, who won a cup with the Penguins. And I think he was also a 7th rounder.
It's not listed on my thing. Actually, I'm going to look it up right now.
That sounds familiar to me. I know he was a late round pick, but I think he might have been a 7th rounder. I could be way off, but sometimes I got to dust off the old mental Rolodex and see if I'm actually remembering things correctly. But
he was drafted 230th overall, so that puts him at. Trying to see.
I'm not even sure what his draft year was. It might have been
seventh overall, last overall.
He was Mr. Irrelevant. Yeah.
So there's another example, perfect example of a guy who, again, does just somehow flies under the radar and ends up having an impactful career in the National Hockey League.
Yep. I don't need no stinking list, but it does help. It seriously helps. Definitely.
Any aspect that I haven't mentioned that we see in the NHL that's either different from the others, or maybe something that just stands out to you that's just like, this is something that is a very unique NHL draft thing that we probably should mention?
Well, I think that, and it's going to change now with everybody having basically staying home, if you will, because they'll have the comforts of their own quote unquote war room at home. You'll still have the cameras and the coverage and all that. It'll just be different. What'll be different is the person-to-person interaction, because when players are drafted, they then kind of run a media gauntlet, and they basically get a handler and they go through. And I'm sure it's the same thing, with the other sports. But what people don't see necessarily behind the scenes is once a draft pick gets the picture, does all that stuff, they kind of disappear underneath the stands there. And right away, they're getting their draft photos taken. So you see the one of the guy, he's got the hockey stick like this, or the puck on the end of it, holding up the puck in front of him or whatever. That's all done draft day. And then they go through, and whoever the card sponsor is for the league, you sign a bunch of stuff. Whoever the jersey sponsor is, you sign a bunch of stuff. You do your signings, you do your photos, you do all of that right away. And that circus goes on. And then that player is available to the media, whether it's the home team media, home city media, maybe NHL Network. They kind of do that one like right after they get picked. But their responsibilities don't end right away. It turns into a pretty long day for the player, and probably for the next hour or two after they're picked, they are busy. So they don't get to celebrate until later on. But yeah, it's a bit of a circus behind the scenes, but it's fun. It's fun. So that's going to change next year. But if you are able, Utah fans, to go to Sphere and try to go check it out, I know seating is limited, but I think it'd be worth going because it'll be the last time you'll see it.
Last time, yeah. As I mentioned, they're decentralizing the draft after this year. Everyone, most of the people are going to stay home. And I'm curious to see exactly how that's going to work too, with the announcements or whatever. Are they going to have Gary Bettman announce every single pick starting next year?
I would doubt it. I think teams will still do it because it's easy enough to put cameras in the war room and have the general managers make the pick. Now, a lot could go wrong with that. I suppose you better have someone ready to do it. You know what I think might happen, though, is you're going to have basically a TV show hosted through the league's NHL Network studios or TSN studios or Sportsnet studios, whoever's covering it.
Yep.
And they're going to do it that way. And I think it's going to be like a big studio show that cuts to live looks at the different teams drafting.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious because I would like if I'm someone who wants to attend the draft, I'd love to kind of be where again going across the stage, shaking hands with at the very least the general manager or something like that, or maybe the assistant general manager because maybe the GM needs to be in the actual room or something like someone there.
Well, they all go up to make the big first round picks,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's going to be missing is that element because you can't have John Jones if, the pick number 2 belongs to Detroit. Well, you can't have that guy in Detroit, but what happens if Detroit doesn't pick him? Then he's standing there at Little Caesars Arena going, I guess Detroit didn't pick me. Should I just, what do I do now? So I think you're going to see cameras at players' homes and cameras in the war rooms. That's probably what we're going to end up with now.
Which is honestly a little bit unfortunate that we're going to get to that point.
Yeah.
But
not as cool. Cool factor drops.
It does drop. And I think that's kind of why I think if you take a look at it, the prices are going up because they realize that this is the last time you're getting that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Something that we've never ever seen that you don't see anywhere else.
Yeah.
With the NBA being a much smaller, again, only 2 rounds, really quick in and out. The MLB being just whatever the hell of a cluster it is. And the NFL being decentralized too, where it's all like you mentioned, cameras in like the players' homes and everywhere else. Which is interesting given that they still have a stage. Like I've always thought how that worked.
Yeah. But I don't know. We'll see what they got a whole year to figure it out.
They do.
Not my department also. So, I mean, they can hire me to consult. I got a lot of ideas. I'm not going to give them all away here, but yeah.
From what I understanding though, there could potentially be an NHL draft coming to Utah maybe in a few years. The potential. I'm not going to say it will happen, but a very, very very decent possibility it could happen.
That would be interesting. I think they're married to Vegas with the NHL awards now, so
yeah, that's a good place to have the awards. And hey, make it easy. Salt Lake City is only as we mentioned, like a 6-hour drive away.
Yeah,
so
it's not bad.
Not bad. Anyways, any final thoughts before we close things off?
I just think that Utah fans, no matter who you get at number 6, it's going to be exciting and probably a defenseman unless somebody drops into their lap. And so if they do go forward, don't panic. But sometimes you're just picking the best player available. So I can't wait. I can't wait for Friday.
So what you're saying is if Demidov or Kaden Lidstrom drop, then
I don't see how you don't pick them.
You're right.
Then again, who knows?
Who knows? Well, that's going to be it for this episode of the Locked On NHL in Utah podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your shows. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to also hit that notification bell so you get notified every time a new episode drops. As a reminder, we're going to continue our draft coverage as we get ready for the rest of this week. We'll also get you ready for the free agency period because things are happening one after another. We want to make sure you guys stay all up to date with everything you need to know for the Utah Hockey Club. Don't forget to interact with us on social media if you have any questions about all that. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnNHL in Utah. Also on Instagram at LockedOnNHL in Utah. We are on also X, formerly known as Twitter, at LO_NHL Utah. I am personally at Robyn_Leonio. Tom Callahan is at Callahan on air. Interact with us. Ask a question you might have. We might answer right back on a future episode of the Locked On NHL in Utah podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And we'll see you guys next time.